Virgo. This explains why you sometimes feel like an outsider in this world. Have you ever been in the middle of a room full of people smiling, talking, existing so simply, and felt like you were watching it all from behind a thick glass wall? As if everyone there had received the universal instruction manual on how to be human, except you. You look at the interactions, the repetitive dynamics, the expectations that don't make logical sense. It's something that simply doesn't fit. You try to translate your perceptions, try to act as they act, laugh when they laugh, but deep down there's a constant echo, a white noise in your mind that repeats endlessly, "I don't belong here." For those who have the energy of Virgo pulsing deep in their soul, this isn't a passing feeling from a bad afternoon. It's the very texture of reality. You feel like a stranger in this world. And the most painful and fascinating revelation about this is that you don't feel out of place because you're unable to understand the world or connect with people. It's for the exact opposite reason. You see too much. You see the cracks in the foundation that absolutely no one else notices. See the inconsistencies in the words of those who claim to love you. See the dust hidden beneath the existential rug of all humanity. How can you not feel like an alien when you're the only one in the room who can see gravity acting upon things and destroying what others pretend is intact? The great illusion about Virgo, the superficial lie that people love to repeat, is that you are merely the organizers of the material world. People obsessed with spreadsheets, impeccable routines, mathematically arranged drawers. That's what's left for common sense. The invisible truth, the one that pulsates beneath your skin and sometimes suffocates you in the early hours when silence dominates everything, is that your mind operates like a very high-frequency radar. You don't choose to analyze everything. You don't wake up in the morning and think, "Today, I'm going to find the world's flaws." Your nervous system simply picks up on asymmetries. It's mechanical, it's visceral. You enter a room, and in milliseconds, you've already scanned who is uncomfortable, what is out of place, which cog in that social dynamic is about to break. And while the rest of the world floats in the comfortable and anesthetized ignorance of the surface, you are dealing alone with the colossal weight of the depths. It's exhausting. You become an outsider because your natural language is not the language of easy social conventions. When someone asks you something, you don't answer with something agreeable to soothe their ego. You answer with accuracy, with what is real. And the world, most of the time, has an indescribable fear of what is real. Imagine a master watchmaker surrounded by gears, trying to explain the microscopic complexity of springs and time to someone who just impatiently wants to know what time it is. That's your daily interaction with life. You perceive the hidden intention, the slight trace of manipulation behind your co-worker's smile. You see, like a slow-motion film, the self-destructive pattern your friend blindly repeats year after year, only changing the names of the characters in their own tragedy. You anticipate the systemic problem that will explode tomorrow, but that nobody wants to solve today because it's too much work. And what do you do with this avalanche of perception? You try to warn them. You try to fix it. You offer the practical solution, the method, the safest and most efficient way to avoid the pain. And in the overwhelming majority of cases, you receive in return a look of strangeness, impatience, or total ingratitude. They say you're too critical, that you're too heavy, too dense, that you, Virgo, simply don't know how to relax and enjoy the moment. And each time that rejection happens, each time your genuine attempt at protection is mistaken for control, you take a step back. You withdraw your sacred perception. You build another invisible layer of that glass wall that separates you from others. Because desperately trying to save people who don't want to be saved not only hurts your pride, it makes you question, deep down in your conscience, if perhaps, just perhaps, the unsolvable problem is you. It makes you believe that being yourself, with that uninterrupted X-ray vision, is a cruel design flaw of the universe, and it is precisely at this breaking point that isolation begins to become not just a passing feeling, but a survival choice. You prefer the predictable security of your own control, of your inviolable physical and mental space, to having to continue translating your genius into a world that prefers to embrace comfortable chaos. But there is a silent and very deep pain in this choice to retreat. A longing for something you don't even know if it truly exists on the physical plane. The agonizing longing for a place where you don't need to explain the labyrinths of your mind, where you don't need to artificially dim your light, your intelligence, so as not to overshadow the mediocrity of others. A place where being a stranger isn't a perpetual sentence of solitude, but rather a clear sign of mastery, where your absurd ability to see the invisible is revered, not politicized as a disorder or a mania. And while you incessantly search for this feeling of belonging that seems to slip through your fingers, weariness accumulates in your cells, a weariness that isn't cured by a few extra hours of sleep. It's a weariness of the soul, the chronic weariness of being the only anchor of sanity and lucidity in a tempestuous ocean of voluntary illusions. The pain of carrying this lucidity is lonely, and you often wonder how long you will have to bear the weight of the world's irresponsibilities on your shoulders, without anyone even noticing that your inner structure is threatening to collapse. The discomfort of never being truly understood, of always feeling like you need to adjust your frequency to fit into the shallow reality of others, ends up generating a cold and paralyzing anxiety. It was while searching for answers to this that I found this digital book. The material, the divine wisdom that guides your zodiac sign to a purposeful life, isn't about simplistic predictions or shallow stereotypes you're tired of hearing. It's a technology for survival and absolute liberation of the mind. It acts as a high-resolution mirror for those who have spent their entire lives trying to shrink themselves to fit into the narrow molds of the world. By immersing yourself in this reading, you understand how to transform this alien feeling, this constant inadequacy that haunts you, into an unshakable posture of personal power and self-acceptance. You learn once and for all to stop trying to fix what's around you and discover how to use this relentless analytical capacity to build your own inner empire. It's an invitation to delve deep into your true needs, those you hide so efficiently even from yourself. I know exactly where you are right now. You're listening to this and feeling an inexplicable tightness in your chest, a mixture of relief and awe, because finally someone has managed to put into exact words what has been stuck, choking your throat for decades. This visceral recognition is the first and most important step, but you can't stop here. You need the right tool to avoid automatically closing yourself off in that glass armor as soon as the video ends. The link is in the first pinned comment, but be warned, this content may be taken down. Click now, download your copy. Tell me in the comments, when was the last time you tried to help someone by showing them the stark truth with the best of intentions, and ended up being seen as the villain or the annoying one in the story? I want to read about your experiences and understand how this unfair dynamic has affected your daily energy. This role of unwitting villain is not a geographical accident of fate. It is the clearest symptom, the mathematical proof of how your natural light interacts with the shadow of the collective. Because when you feel like a stranger in this world, it's not a sign of weakness, ineptitude, or lack of social skills. It's a direct symptom of your precision. The modern world we live in was meticulously designed for the distracted. Society rewards those who smile and nod, those who consume life without questioning, those who accept the absurd as long as it comes wrapped in a pretty package of toxic positivity. And then, in the middle of this anesthetized theater, you arrive. with the unbearably precise magnifying glass of Virgo, with a mind that simply cannot turn off the search engine, cannot ignore the missing piece in the puzzle of coexistence. You have become, whether you like it or not, the automatic corrector of the universe, and this is not a figure of speech. When a lie is told in front of you, your physical body reacts almost like an organic lie detector. Your stomach subtly tightens. Your breathing changes rhythm. The falsehood of others is almost a biological allergy to your system. How, in the name of pure logic, could you feel like you belong in an environment built on half-truths? There's nothing wrong with you for not being able to dance to this strident, out-of-tune music. Your profound exhaustion from trying to fix everything and everyone, the silent fixer's fatigue, stems precisely from this heroic yet futile attempt to make a barren, neglected land yield perfect fruit. You donate your precious, vital energy, reorganize the emotional and financial mess of others, carefully structure the processes of those you love so they don't suffer, and at the end of the day, what happens? They take what you fixed with your own mental sweat and, in an act of pure impulsiveness, mess it all up again. This depletes your reserves of compassion. This corrodes, drop by drop, your faith in the maturity of humanity. And it pushes you further and further inexorably towards your refuge, that hermetic cocoon of silence and order where, at least your things, you can keep under tight control, where your cup is mathematically aligned in the right place and your books are arranged by subject, because if you don't have the power to tame the insanity of the world outside, you will make your private space an unbreakable sanctuary, a bastion of rationality in the midst of emotional hell. But this constant control, this solitary and methodical refuge you've built as a defense mechanism, also slowly transforms into a prison with large invisible barriers. You realize with sharp clarity that you are shrinking, using your rare genius only to keep your own life functioning on the edge of survival mode instead of thriving. The digital book, the divine wisdom that guides your zodiac sign to a purposeful life, comes in exactly here, not as a theory, but as a tactical master key. It teaches you to disarm this mental trap, to channel this extreme need for control, no longer to eternally defend yourself from the world, but to transcend its logic, so that you stop managing other people's chaos and begin with the same precision to design a reality where your brilliant mind is your greatest unquestionable asset and not your greatest secret burden. It's the definitive manual for embracing your complex nature without a shred of guilt. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey toward the clarity and genius you deserve. The stark, raw, and hard-to-swallow truth is that people admire the brilliant results of Virgo energy, but they can't stand the dense process of Virgo. They want the project delivered and finished with a degree of perfection that no one else achieves. They want the immaculate house, the report without a single formatting error. They want the surgical, ruthless, and precise solution to the financial problem they themselves created. Humanity parasitizes and intensely benefits from your unparalleled ability to bring divine order to human chaos. But the moment you try to show them how the chaos began, when you point out with irrefutable logic the tiny, destructive daily habit that led them to that abyss, the admiration dissolves and turns into instant resistance. It is at that exact moment that you feel you are speaking an alien language. The language barrier rises. You are extending your hands, offering the detailed map of salvation, and they are furious and offended because the map shows craters they would rather pretend don't exist. Do you realize the dimension of the paradox in which you live? You, minds ruled by Mercury, the very archetypal planet of communication, intellect, and the transmission of ideas, often find yourselves locked in the most absolute and deafening silence. Not for lack of vocabulary, not for lack of structured arguments, but because you understand prematurely and with great bitterness that very few human beings are willing to hear the raw truth without the colored filters and without the anesthesia of illusion. Your mental filter was not designed to deceive, embellish, or flatter. It serves to distill, to separate the pure from the impure, fact from fiction. And amidst so many superficial relationships sustained by futile conversations, you will inevitably erect thick, invisible walls of preventive isolation. The glass wall is not there because you want to push love away. It is there as a purification system to filter out those who truly have the necessary depth and deserve unrestricted access to your core. Because your surrender when it happens is monumental and total. If you finally allow someone to cross your defenses and enter your sacred space, you don't offer halves. You don't play the game of indifference. You offer your silent devotion, your continuous service, your fierce and relentless loyalty. But the mathematics of pain is merciless. How many betrayals of trust, how many wastes of your goodwill were necessary for you to learn in the worst possible way that the overwhelming majority don't even have a worthy place to store so much intensity and dedication? As a result, you have become the careful observer in the shadows, a brilliant scientist of human emotions, dissecting social behaviors from afar, assessing affective risks, protecting your pure crystal heart behind a facade of icy, practical, and supposedly unshakable steel. But within the impenetrable walls of this fortress of efficiency, there is a silent guilt that corrodes your peace. The inexplicable guilt of not feeling things in the same histrionic way that others feel them. When everyone around you is crying uncontrollably, consumed by a loss or a sudden problem, your mind does something that frightens even you. It freezes. It goes into strategic operation mode. While they panic, you are processing the practical procedures, thinking about how to resolve the bureaucracy, who needs to be notified, how to hold the structure together so that the ceiling doesn't collapse on everyone's heads. And while doing this, while holding up reality with your own calloused hands, you look at the desperate expressions beside you and silently ask yourself, why do I seem so cold? Why can't I just crumble, scream, and dissolve into tears like them? This cognitive dissonance tears you apart inside, fueling the idea that you are a stranger in this world, an android among humans. But listen carefully, you are not cold. That is the biggest lie you have told yourself. Your way of loving is to sustain. Your love is a verb of pragmatic action, not just useless poetry recited to the wind. You love when you tirelessly ensure that your mother's medicine was taken at the exact time, milligram by milligram. You love when you spend the early morning hours reviewing every clause of that obscure contract so that your partner is not deceived and loses everything. You love by being the invisible steel backbone of someone who is breaking into 1,000 pieces. However, this immense and silent strength is rarely applauded and almost never celebrated in poems or songs. You feel like a displaced alien because the world simply doesn't have trained eyes to recognize practical love. Humanity prefers to intensely romanticize great tragedies, dramatic words thrown haphazardly, and flamboyant movie screen gestures, while the true and sustainable miracle of Virgo's energy, which is to keep the cold gears of life turning, ensuring everyone's survival, even in the worst emotional storms, passes by completely unseen and ungrateful to untrained and selfish eyes. This invisibility, the weight of being the pillar that can never crack, takes a heavy toll on your spirit. An inevitable point of saturation arrives where you sit in the dark, exhausted to the core, wondering if it's worth continuing to support pillars of structures that deep down neither belong to you nor welcome you back. And it is to surgically resolve this acute crisis of meaning and exhaustion that the digital book, The Divine Wisdom That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Purposeful Life, proves absolutely essential for your current life situation. It takes you by the hand and methodically guides you out of this endless labyrinth of unrecognized service. It shows you, with the logic you so respect, how to redirect this visceral devotion to your own center, to your own edification. How to immediately stop using your supreme intelligence as a crutch to support the complacency of others and start using it as the golden lever to build your own destiny. This book teaches you how to transform that chronic guilt of being different, cold, or precise into your most lethal and efficient strategic asset. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. By accepting the premises of this profound inner transformation, a silent yet seismic revolution occurs within the architecture of your psyche. The great paradox that has always haunted your existence in Virgo, the painful feeling of being a cog that doesn't fit into any known machine, finally reveals itself in all its splendor, not as a genetic flaw, but as an extremely advanced evolutionary project. You, in all your nervous and meticulous complexity, were not made to blend homogeneously with the crowd. If the evolution and survival of the human spirit desperately need beacons to cut through the fog, you are the reinforced concrete structure that sustains the light and never succumbs to the sea breeze of complacency. Understand this in your gut. Feeling like a stranger in this world is not karmic punishment. It is not divine retribution for your supposed rigidity. It is, in fact, the high and non-negotiable price of admission to true self-mastery. Stop for a second and think using your impeccable logic. If you, with all your critical refinement, fit perfectly and were completely comfortable in this modern scenario of superficial illusions and plastic connections, who would be left to point out the emergency exit? Who would keep the compass of reason calibrated when the entire ship began to sink into chaos? Who besides you would be able to see the underlying mathematical order, the invisible pattern, operating even in the midst of the most absolute and terrifying chaos? As this understanding descends from your analytical mind to your heart, what once seemed like a punishing and cutting solitude gradually and majestically begins to transform into something different. Sovereignty. The majesty of one who doesn't need to belong to the circus. You discover that you no longer need fleeting external validation, much less the approval of those people who can't see beyond the smokescreen of their own inflated vanity.